right, welcome aboard, everybody. Man-Child Show with Boy Green Digital. And it is time to brunch with Bud. Look at Bud, still taking his seat at the start of the video. I didn't even realize he's on camera. Welcome aboard. Today is a broadcast brought to you by our friends at Cam's Pizzeria, where there's always love at first slice. So go see our friends Tony and Cam's in Oswego and Camillus. And we are presented by Northeast Roofing Professionals. But if you just look above you there on the screen, you'll see that lovely logo of Northeast Roofing Professionals. We've gotten a lot of good comments about the NERPCNY.com logo. Are you impressed with it? Many people have said it looks a little Denver Nuggets-ish. Give me your thoughts on the logo.
It's a lovely logo.
You like it?
I like it, and you're right. It looks a little Denver Nuggety. I happen to be that happens to be my team, so it does strike a little bit of a chord. Yes, it
Listen,
does.
you got a pretty aged house down there in Skaneateles. I mean, I think there are parts of your house you said were like back in the 1800s, man. It might be time for a new roof. You think about our friends at Northeast Roofing Professionals. All right, let's talk some local sports and some national sports here as we brunch with Bud Poliquin. And, Bud, let's start with the local and Syracuse basketball. So we've been chatting the last few weeks. Obviously, Adrian Autry has been on the hot seat. But you were throwing a lifeline, dare I say, out there to Syracuse. You know, like, hey, they still got to play Duke, and you never know. They could go down there and shock the world. And, hey, Carolina's coming to the JMA, and, they might do something here. Well, the doing is not happening. They lost both of those games, and Syracuse now sits at 15-13 overall, 6-9 in the ACC with 3 ACC regular season games to go. So I think the fantasy is over, Bud. It is time to talk about reality. Unless you're going to tell me today, there's still that thing called the ACC tournament, and, yada, yada. Let's talk about it. Where do you stand today with Syracuse basketball?
Well, let's review exactly what I've said for a long time now. This is his third year. I've been saying it for 3 years. The hire of Adrian Autry on the day he was hired was an indefensible hire. Indefensible. You could not stand before the basketball world, the college basketball world, and make a compelling case as to why this was the best guy for the job. Okay? So I was very clear that it was an indefensible hire. I was also very clear that nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody knows that this might have been the start of the next John Wooden. So I said 3 years ago, let's go see what he can do. But I, for one, 3 years ago and through the 3 seasons, have been and always have been dubious that this guy is capable of this job. Okay?
Fair enough.
If anybody out there is thinking that I've
position clear, position clear.
Yeah, that I'm a Pollyanna, all that, not true. I was one of the naysayers who said this doesn't make sense. But you got to be fair. Once they make a bad decision, well, an indefensible, we don't know if it's a bad decision. At the time, was an indefensible one. Okay. Once the decision's made, we got to sit and play it out. So all I've maintained is that he's got to give him through this year. And I still say that. Yes, he is 15-13. The math says he can end up 18-13. The math further says that he might win a game or two in the tournament. And now he's at 20 wins, the math says. Okay? So I was saying last week that I don't know if he wins 20 games and he's still got time on his contract and the new AD is just getting settled in, who knows? Maybe they bring him back. If, okay? Does he deserve to be brought back? At this point, nobody can make an argument that that's true.
Now, look,
you said play games out.
Now, you said you don't think it was a bad hire, but you said you used the word it was an indefensible hire. Yeah. Define what you mean by that. I think people want to understand what you're talking about there. Why was it an indefensible hire?
Well, I'll answer your question with a question.
Okay.
What was on his resume that would have compelled you, if you were doing the hiring, to say, this is our guy?
Yeah, I would not have hired him. I'm in agreement with you. And Paul is in agreement as well, even though he's not here to defend himself today. Yes.
Right. So my point is, on the day he's hired, this is a great job. Okay? It's one of the top in the last 30, 40 years. It's been a top 10 program, give or take. We can argue that they're better than top 10 or are they top 15? Doesn't matter. They've been really, really good for decades. And a Hall of Fame coach is walking out the door. So who are you going to hire to take over a franchise, a college basketball franchise that is almost iconic over the last few decades, not years, decades? And you're going to bring in a guy to replace a Hall of Famer, giving him this wondrous program? Well, a guy who's never been a head coach anywhere, and I don't want to hear about AAU or whatever stuff he was doing that. He didn't have anything on the resume that made him a deserving candidate. That's why it was indefensible. You needed to bring a guy in with more experience, more than an on-the-job training sort of a guy who has hands-on experience with not only coaching, but with dealing with the corporate side of college basketball. I'm talking about money, recruiting, donors, alums, administration, media. Adrian Autry may be a wonderful guy, and he might have been a great coach for, I don't know, Canisius or someplace. Send him off somewhere, see what he can do, and then bring him back. That's what I mean, that it was indefensible. Completely inexperienced, a razor-thin resume. That's a different thing than say it was a bad hire, because who knows? Everybody has to get his start somewhere. He would have started up really high in the food chain, and it might have turned out to be a good hire, and my dubious, cynical thoughts would have been proven null and void. So I don't think I'm wrong in saying, I know I'm right in saying it was indefensible, and I'm not trying to be political when I say, but once he's hired, let's see if it was a bad hire. Right now, it looks like a not so good hire. How about that?
Oh, you're willing to go that far?
I'll go that far.
Obviously, like I told you, we've been talking about this for weeks, and last week's video, Bud, we spoke in depth about Adrian Autry. You threw out some of the similar thoughts than you're throwing today. You offered that premise about, that maybe Syracuse, in all its tumult right now, about to replace a chancellor, about to replace an athletic director who's on board until July 1st, I think, and who's making this hire, and who's leading this search. Maybe there's a theory here that maybe this isn't the right time, regardless of what's going on with the program and its record, to replace the coach. And as a result, we have gotten a lot of comments. But Bud, I have to share this one with you. I don't have it in front of me, but I can paraphrase. It's perfectly fine. This was great. So you've gotten some, dare I say, detrimental type, criticisms to say, Bud's a dud, that's why Bud should stay retired, like, who cares? Bud's never known his what from his what kind of thing. But then there was this one, there were several comments on the positive side. You should know, Bud. People are out there saying nice things about you too. And this one gentleman very nicely said, "It's great to hear Bud's voice again. I didn't realize he's still alive." I read it, and he's still with us. With us meaning alive, right? And I responded to his comments, because we can in this YouTube world respond to comments, and I said, "I assure you, sir, Bud is indeed alive, and he will be back with us again next week." So I just wanted to put that out there to the public. Anybody wondering, Bud has not passed. He is still with us, and still delivering sports content with us every week, doing our brunch with Bud.
The declaration of my death is greatly exaggerated, as Mark Twain said.
Apparently so.
But let me go back to this other thing too.
Yeah, go ahead.
What you just said is quite remarkable. That we don't know who's going to make the hire. We don't know who's part of the group that's going to make this hire. Mm-hmm. If you remember the last time Syracuse hired a basketball coach, it was handled in the most clownish way. Boeheim was for whatever reason was telling us, "I don't know if I'm fired. Go ask the athletic director. I guess I'm still the coach, but I don't know. Ask him." And then John Wildhack was playing games with the way he plays games, and so it was an embarrassment. They
put out a press release. Is what happened. It was all done in a press release. A nearly 50-year head coach was put to the curb in a press release.
Yeah, it was embarrassing. And even before that, when we went through the Mike Hopkins, is he the coach, is he not the coach? This school does not do basketball hiring very well, okay? Mike Hopkins was the coach in waiting. The next thing you know, he was going to be waiting for too long, and he left. Then Jim Boeheim is retiring, or he's not retiring. He's being released, or he's not being released. Everything is up in the air. And then finally, almost right to the day of, there's some sort of what's going on up there. So if John Wildhack is involved with this hiring process, it makes no sense to me because he's not the AD and it should be the other AD's choice. John should have nothing to do with it. And again, with the way he handled the last hiring, it's like, well, this guy doesn't seem to do hirings too well. So I think I said it last week, and I'll say it again. I have nothing against John Wildhack. I don't really know. I know him, but I don't know him. His brother Henry I know really well, and he was working under Daryl Gross for a long time. But John Wildhack should be out of the picture in terms of input into the next hire. And there again, I would say it would be indefensible if somehow John Wildhack played a major role. He wants to play a ceremonial role, fine. But a major role in the hiring of the next basketball coach, that would be indefensible, just like the hiring of Adrian Autry was.
Assuming they make a change, Bud, who should be making the hire? Because if it's not the AD, and obviously it's not going to be the chancellor, who is it? Who makes the hire? Are you hiring a consulting firm and then they're just going to push it down to the board of trustees? Like, how does this get done? The fans are standing at the gates. Okay, right. They are standing at the gates. They are asking for change and just going under the premise that they're going to get it, fine. But the window is so short, Bud. As soon as you get into this NCAA tournament world, which is right on the doorstep here, we are on the doorstep of it, okay? Right after that, as soon as it's on, portal, transfer, everything's boom, boom, boom. Like everything starts happening. You've got to start managing your roster right away. If you don't have a coach in place, chaos.
Well, again, that suggests that I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that in light of all you said, there's no AD, legitimate AD, because this one is out. There's the possibility of the coach being out. There's a possibility of the new AD coming in too late to get anything done. The whole mishmash of it all, plus the idea that the guy could still win, as crazy as it sounds, and I know how, I got ears, I know how crazy these words sound, but the guy's not done yet, and he's still got a contract. So the answer is, I have no idea who's going to hire the coach. Because we have and it's inconceivable to me. Logically, it's hard to understand how anybody can think you can hire the coach and then get a legitimate big-time AD candidate to come in when he had no say in the hiring of a fresh coach and a new beginning of Syracuse basketball. So the clock, the calendar, everything you just outlined, suggests that maybe, just maybe, he comes back for another year and the new AD gets to figure out what's going on once he's in the chair.
Maybe, baby. All right, we're going to just take a moment. This is the at MC Show Digital, the Man Child Show with Boy Green Digital. It is our Brunch with Bud segment. Bud, I just want to just acknowledge our sponsors today, Northeast Roofing Professionals and Cam's Pizzeria. When we come back, a couple other college-related things, including another team taking a butt kicking, and it's not Syracuse. We'll talk about that when we return. Unexpected. Here we go. Right after this. We'll be right back.
When you think of Cam's Pizzeria, think about two of your favorites, their zesty buffalo chicken wing pizza or their tasty chicken bacon ranch. Over 16 specialty pizzas made fresh daily with the best ingredients. Indulge in their homemade calzones, subs, wraps, salads, and their famous cannolis for dessert. They're all made with love just for you. Order online for 10% off at camspizza.com. Locations in Camillus and Oswego. Cam's Pizzeria. It's love at first slice.
Finding the right local roofing company can be tricky. You don't want to hire the wrong roofers, or you could end up spending a fortune on repairs. The pros at Northeast Roofing Professionals can ensure your home is protected by a strong and sturdy roof. Locally owned and operated, over 30 years experience, free estimates, and competitively priced. Don't settle for an inexperienced roofing contractor. Turn to Northeast Roofing Professionals. Discounts for military and first responders. Reach out and let them put a sturdy roof over your head. NERPCNY.com. NERPCNY.com.
How about perhaps but one of those metal roofs? Those are nice. Little metal roof.
It's a beautiful thing.
It's supposed to last 50 years. That'll last you, my friend.
I might be dead by then.
You want to do that? All right. Let's continue our thought on college basketball. A couple other little nuggets that I picked up in college basketball. Let me first go to the blowout that I was mentioning. So earlier this year, St. John's and UConn, Rick Pitino and Dan Hurley went mano a mano, and Pitino got the best of them. Well, Hurley exacted his revenge this week on Pitino and blew out St. John's by more than 30 points. So a little revenge. And it made me think, Bud, of the days of the Big East when routinely we had Calhoun against Boeheim, Boeheim against Thompson, Thompson against Calhoun, Massimino against Thompson. We had some coaching greats in the Big East, and this tilt, we don't get this very often in college basketball these days, especially with so many great coaches stepping away from the game like Jay Wright, Tony Bennett. I got a Tony Bennett story for you in a couple of minutes, but this brought me back a little bit, seeing a Titanic matchup. Of course, the matchup didn't live up to it, at least in round 2, where Danny Hurley got some serious revenge. Talk about it.
Well, what I didn't understand about that game is that after the game, and these coaches do this all the time, and we and I am guilty. We don't say, well, what do you mean by that? And Pitino, after the game, throws himself on the live grenade. It's all my fault, he said. This hasn't – I didn't have ready. Mm-hmm. More or less, he said, that's not the player's fault. This is all on me. And I don't understand that, because what are you talking about? You didn't play. The players are the ones who shot 22% or whatever weird number they shot. Mm-hmm. It was just a game where everything went right for UConn and everything went wrong for St. John's. It doesn't happen often. But it was just the gods had their fun. The basketball gods decided to let one team just be great and the other team just not be. And it happened that way. And instead of just saying, which I would have done as coach, hey, just said, I said, folks, I don't have a response. I don't know what happened. I mean, we were ready. We were coached. There's no way they weren't ready to play. They were going to play UConn at UConn with first place on the line and the tournament breathing down everybody's necks. They weren't not prepared. It wasn't bad coaching. It was, hey, the ball didn't go in the basket. So what do I have to say about that game? I have to say it's too bad, because it was supposed to be a really terrific game. Everybody thought it would be. St. John's had won, 13 in a row? Nobody saw that coming. But we go back to Adrian Autry. There's no explaining sports sometimes. Adrian Autry can win the next 3 games and win a game or 2 in a tournament. Would that surprise anybody? Would anybody who's followed sports for any length of time be shocked by what could happen in that way? If you are, then you're not really attuned to what happened in Storrs or Hartford. They must play in Hartford, in Connecticut anyway, earlier this week. So what do I think? I think it's weird. It happens, and it wasn't because it's all on Rick Pitino. This team didn't put it in the basket. The other team did.
All right. Well, he did fall on the sword. One other college basketball related story, and this all is connective tissue too. So I mentioned that name, Tony Bennett, one of several coaches in recent years who have stepped away from the game of college basketball and seemingly gone nowhere. Well, Tony Bennett just got hired by the LA Lakers as an advisor, but it makes me sad that we have coaches like Jay Wright and Tony Bennett, just to use 2 as examples, that were essentially still in their prime, electing not to coach college basketball teams. What does this say about the current state of college basketball?
Well, the knee jerk is that why would people who were established coaches and raised in the game the way it was once choreographed on and off the court, why would somebody who's got his money, who's got his accolades, who's looking at a game that he doesn't recognize, talking to and about players and their families who are speaking a language that you've never heard before, where the players are basically making their contract demands known to you, the head coach in the living room. It used to be you'd go into the household. I wouldn't know this, but from what is told, you'd go in the house, you're recruiting Joe, and Joe's mom says, here, eat dinner, and you eat the dinner, and you eat the apple pie she cooks, and you try to woo mom and dad with the, boy, this is a great apple pie, we're going to take good care of your son, etc. Now you go into the living room, and I'm guessing there's an agent sitting there saying, okay, coach, how much are you going to pay my guy? Because these are the offers I already have. Now, if you're a Tony Bennett sort of a guy, you're going to say, this isn't what I signed up for. This isn't the game I knew. And so much of the game is recruiting, and I don't want to do this like this. And by the way, I've got millions of dollars, and I've got all my trophies, and I've got all my accolades. And, I can always do TV if I need to get back into basketball somehow. Do you think Jim Boeheim wanted to do any of that stuff, really? Now, I know he was older and it was time to go. As Barack Obama told us the other day, you age out, whether you're a sports writer or a college basketball coach or a former president, you age out. Jim Boeheim aged out. I aged out. Obama aged out, all right? But these guys who didn't age out saw this game, saw this life, not at all what I want. Now, because now another thing, at the end of every year, these coaches now have to recruit on 3 levels. You have to recruit the high school kids. You have to woo and recruit everybody in the portal who you like. And you have to re-recruit your own roster. Please stay here. Don't go. Who wants to do that? If you have the money and the accolades, you've already been to the mountaintop. Why would they do it? So you may be sad, and you have your right, but you shouldn't be surprised, and you shouldn't be, and I'm not saying you are, by the way, but anybody who would be surprised, why would they walk away? I'll tell you why they walk away, because there's no fun anymore. And it was a beast that they'd never
signed up for.
It was a beast they never had to encounter. So they say, I don't need this. Let's go home. I'll go hang out with the wife and the kids or the grandkids.
Well, speaking of beasts, let's talk about this guy, Victor Wembanyama. Man, this freakish 7'6", 7'7", whatever he is, beanpole of a guy with the skills, at times of a point guard, for crying out loud. Yeah. Playing for the San Antonio Spurs, who have now won 10 games in a row as of this recording. Give me your take. The Spurs turning it around so quickly with Wembanyama. I know there was an injury last year, so maybe it's a little fool's gold, but still, they were not a top team in the NBA last year. They are a top team in the NBA, a team right now with championship aspirations, and he is obviously the biggest reason.
I was one, and I was serious, although I realized how foolish it was, but I was still somewhat serious. I thought the Thunder was going to win 75 games this year, but they're certainly going to win 70. And now it turns out the Spurs may catch them, and the Thunder might not even finish in first place.
Yes.
And the Thunder that's a tremendous team. And the reason why the Spurs are the Spurs is they really got some people other than Wembanyama. Let's not kid ourselves. They got a nice roster with some nice young, athletic, like it's a freak show how good they are athletically and how young they are. Okay. So that's all, to be acknowledged. But what we're seeing now is quite literally something we've never seen before in basketball. You can look at, a big hitter in baseball. Well, we've seen big hitters in baseball. We've seen, high volume scorers in hockey. We've seen great golfers, etc. We've never seen this. We've had great basketball players. I'm not saying necessarily that he's better than Michael Jordan, LeBron James, or these people. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is I've never seen this kind of a creature. You say he's got the skills of a point guard. Guess what he does? I saw a shot he took the other day. He was from the deepest corner you can imagine. And I don't know if the clock was ticking down or something. He saves the ball from going out of bounds. And he throws it in at 7'4" or whatever. And it wasn't like a desperation. He went up and took the jump shot and was there. We talked before his arrival that basketball was becoming positionless. No longer was it center, forward, guard. It was bigs and smalls. All right. This guy is a big and small at 7'4". He's big because he's 7'4", but his skill level says he could be a small. Freak show. Total freak show. If he stays healthy, both this year through the playoffs and in his career, wow. It's a wow. And guess what? That's hardly incisive, and I know that. And I know it's a lot of duh there. But what can you say? What could anybody say about Wembanyama other than a variation on what I just said? Freak show, never been seen before. He can do it. He's the best player defensively on the floor. There are times he is the most unstoppable offensive player on the floor. He blocked the guy yesterday, the day before. He did not leave his feet. The guy was going to the basket. Wembanyama did not leave his feet, and he blocked the guy. When you can block a guy without leaving your feet, all right? And when there are times when he's unstoppable on offense and clearly the best defensive player in the league, what do you say other than yikes? Never seen him before. He's like from another world. He's from another world.
And the funny thing about it too is, like, you know, I remember watching Wilt play and how freakish Wilt was and how he did, you know, a lot of similar things, but it was just like everybody else on the court was a Lilliputian and he was the giant, and he was just swatting everything away. And if he got it anywhere near the basket, goodbye, he's dunking, he's dropping it in. I mean, there was no stopping him. It was just like, if they got him the ball into position, it was possession over. Just head on down to the other side. You're not going to do anything to stop this guy. And then in the new era of basketball, we have seen the diminishment of the really big center, and we have seen athletic guys, whether it be guards or powerful guys like LeBron James who can play multiple positions, become the crux and the focus of basketball. And the thought here was that the big guys, they're just too clumsy. They're just too gangly and big, and they can't play in this now athletic game that has become, you know, the 2020s plus, even sooner than that, you know, but the modern day NBA. And yet here we are. And this is reminding me of Wilt all over again. I mean, like, all these athletic guys can't do anything to this guy. If he gets it in position, it is over. Period. Over.
And he's a kid.
He's a kid. He hasn't even learned the game yet. He hasn't even fully grown into his body yet.
Right. So where he's headed, should he stay healthy?
The only thing that could stop him is injury. That's what I was just going to say. That's the only thing that could stop this guy.
I mean, we've had a lot of great, you know, once upon a time, I'm talking Venus, the father of the current Sabonis. Yao Ming was going to be wow, but injuries took both of those two down. Ralph Sampson was going to be something special, but injuries, you know, hampered him. So we have to keep this kid healthy, and we have to see him over the next 10 and 12 years. And you got to keep him involved. You know, you don't let his head get this big. You don't let him, you know, God help us if he goes to the Lakers and starts becoming an LA kind of guy.
Yes.
Let him stay in San Antonio like Tim Duncan. Let him stay focused on basketball. Let him stay healthy and look out. And by the way, the other guy who's out there, you know, Jokic is getting into that argument. You talk about the greatest centers of all time. Anybody who now doesn't include Jokic hasn't been paying attention to that guy either, because he does a lot of stuff too. But again, he's not 7'4". And he can't run and jump like this other guy. So Wembanyama needs to stay healthy, needs to stay focused, and give him 10 years and now take a look at him. We're going to see something that's absolutely extraordinary.
I hope he stays healthy. It really will be interesting to see where his career goes. All right, final one for you, bud. I'll let you wax poetic. Your favorite sport we've known for years and years is the game of baseball. And yes, we are officially now in spring training. We are seeing preseason games. My Mets played today. So talk to me about is it still for you after all these years? Is it still like spring has sprung, baseball is back, the world is renewed, you know, the tulips are coming up out of the ground? Is it that feeling still for you when baseball gets started in spring training every year?
Well, not exactly, but it's still my favorite game. And, well, you know, we are in the golden era of baseball. Maybe they don't play the game the way we want them to play the game. But the talent level is, you know, off the charts. These guys are terrific. You know, people used to make fun of baseball players that they're, you know, they could be fat guys and still be dominant. And we have a few fat guys out there, but by and large, these are real athletes. They do great things. They strike out too much. You know, they don't do a lot of baseball, cerebral stuff from a baseball point of view.
I don't pitch a lot of innings.
Yeah, they don't do that. The skill set and the athleticism is remarkable. The game could be better, but the athletes have never been better. But I'll tell you what, part of me says that there's no way they'll stop playing in 27 or not start playing in 27 because there's just too much money with TV contracts and all that. However, enjoy this 2026 because 2027, at least a full season, is not guaranteed. We are going to have a massive argumentative world in baseball starting at the tail end of this season and certainly when the World Series is over. So I would tell you and everybody else, I know we're mad and rightfully so that the Dodgers are supreme, that it's not fair what's going on. But I would remind people that while that's true, the Blue Jays probably should have, not could have, they probably should have won the World Series last year because the Blue Jays outplayed the Dodgers last year in the World Series by almost every statistical metric. So it's possible in baseball that in a short series, even the Dodgers can be taken down. You're not taking them down over 162. That's not happening. No way, no how. In a short series, they're not destined to win because they shouldn't have won last year. Anyway, enjoy baseball, Jimmy boy, because you might not get the full Monty of baseball in 2027.
Well, we started this broadcast, Bud, by talking about a comment by a viewer that you were indeed perhaps passed. I very correctly, with a comment, let that viewer know that you are indeed alive. Any messages you have out there for anybody who thinks you're no longer with us? Maybe I'll just give you the microphone for that to finish up today's brunch with Bud.
Well, I'm finished in a lot of ways. Okay. So let's acknowledge that, you know, the body is going, the mind is going, then maybe quite likely the skill set, the thinking part of what I used to do might be on the way out. But no, I'm very much alive. Just got back from a little time away in Florida. So I'm refreshed, revived, and ready to go.
Okay.
But, I'm still, I'm still knocking around. I'm still having fun on this podcast. And no, I'm not dead yet.
Okay. It's good to know. All right, Bud. We'll see you next week. Unless something happens to you, we'll see you next week, my friend.
All right, Jimmy boy. It's always a delight. See you next week.